SMEs employ 70% of the workforce in Singapore, so it's significant. The MES acknowledges this. Now, as a regulator, the MES tries to balance competing policy considerations. On the one hand, protecting investors, and on the other hand, promoting the growth of SMEs. So it seems to be taking a middle-of-the-road approach, and you sense this consultation paper seems to be putting in place a launchpad for further regulations going forward, or further relaxation of regulations going forward. For a start, the MES proposes to restrict participation on the platform to attract investors and institutional investors. So an equities-based crowdfunding platform must also restrict access to it. Otherwise, there might be in breach of advertising restrictions that flow from certain exemptions from the prospectus requirements. So if you don't have a restricted access to platforms, you might be in breach of advertising restrictions. So it's still a very cautious approach by limiting the scope of investors and ensuring that there is no public broadcast or advertising. In terms of the capital requirements, I think the industry would welcome this. There's now a relaxation of the requirements from either a quarter or $500,000 Singapore dollars, depending on how you're structured, to a lower ceiling of $50,000. The MES has also decided to waive the requirement for security deposit, which is currently stands at $100,000, if the crowdfunding platform does not hold customer monies. So that's an important consideration. The MES mentioned explicitly that they think that crowdfunding regulation is still in nascent stages in most major jurisdictions. But it does look like some other regulators might be ahead of the game compared to Singapore. For instance, Malaysia has started approving the first batch of 6 securities-based crowdfunding platforms recently already. There have been some critique that maybe the restrictions are too restrictive in terms of not allowing full retail participation, because it seems to be counterintuitive. When you talk about crowdfunding, you really are looking at funding by the crowd, by retail participants. So the sense seems to be that the MES is taking a cautious first step, but we hope that in future there might be further relaxation of the rules and a broader segment of the retail public is allowed to participate in this platform. For instance, there might be creative ways of looking at this by allowing retail participation, but having measures such that based on a self-declaration from the retail public, they can only say invest in a crowdfunding platform based on X% of whatever investable assets they have.